You've found Psychotic Confessions. This is a place for the stories people don't tell in daylight, the ones that stay with you, the ones that don't have clean endings. Settle in, turn the lights down. And whatever you do, don't listen to this alone. I woke up to the sound of my laptop keyboard, clicking softly in the silence of my small apartment. The cursor blinked steadily on the screen, the only light in the room cutting through the darkness. I had never seen it before. Something was off about this whole situation. I sat frozen in bed, a cold sweat trickling down my back. I just moved into an apartment on the 3rd floor of a rundown building in the city's outskirts. The hallway always smelled faintly of damp and old cigarettes. The previous tenant must have left in a hurry. There were still some items in the closet that I hadn't bothered to move. Old books, a broken lamp, and an odd collection of knickknacks. One evening, after coming back from work late, the apartment felt colder than usual. When I got back to my apartment building and walked through the creaking doors, everything felt slightly off-kilter. The next day, I decided to rearrange my apartment. When I cleaned out the kitchen cabinets for a thorough wash, I found a small box under a stack of old plates that looked like it had been forgotten by the previous tenant. Inside was an old photo album filled with pictures of strangers, people who looked happy and carefree in their snapshot moments. A few days later, the unease grew stronger. Walking back from work one evening, the streetlights flickered ominously, as if trying to warn me of something. When I got back to my apartment building and walked through the creaking doors, everything felt slightly off-kilter. That was the first one. It wasn't the last. The unsettling incidents continued to escalate, each one more unnerving than the last. One evening, as I sat on my couch, watching an old movie, Oscar bolted across the room for no apparent reason. He leaped onto the window sill and began to hiss at something outside, something I couldn't see. The hairs on his back stood straight up, and he arched his spine in a classic defensive posture. His eyes were wide with fear. As quickly as it had started, Oscar's outburst stopped. He retreated from the window and curled up under the couch, trembling slightly. I checked outside. There was nothing but the usual cityscape. Cars passing by, distant streetlights casting long shadows on the pavement. But for some reason, the sight of Oscar's fear lingered in my mind, echoing a primal response that something wasn't right. The phenomenon of pareidolia, our tendency to perceive familiar patterns where none exist, might offer some psychological comfort. But what if it were more than that? What if there truly was something lurking just beyond my perception, tapping into an ancient fear that has haunted humans since the dawn of time? The thought sent a shiver down my spine, and I found myself questioning the very fabric of reality around me. A few days later, it happened again. The same sound, soft, rhythmic taps at irregular intervals, echoed through the apartment. This time, though, it was different. It was closer. Instead of being muffled by walls and floors, the sound seemed to originate from my hallway. My heart pounded as I walked towards the source, each step heavy with dread. I reached out to turn the doorknob that led to the main room, but hesitated for a moment. The taps continued, louder now and more insistent. It was just a tree branch or something like that, I told myself. But as I stepped into the living room, I froze. There was no sign of any disturbance outside the window. The sound abruptly stopped, leaving me standing there with my heart hammering against my ribs. A week later, there was another incident. I returned home from work late one evening, the rain still falling softly. As soon as I entered my apartment, I noticed something odd. A faint scent lingered in the air, sweet and cloying, like a perfume that shouldn't have been there. It wasn't mine, nor did it belong to any of my friends who might have visited. The smell seemed to come from my bedroom. My heart raced as I pushed open the door, half expecting to find something or someone, but all was quiet and still. The room was just as I had left it. The bed made, clothes folded neatly on the chair, everything in its place. Yet that scent persisted. It clung to the air like a thick fog, making my stomach churn with unease. I threw open the window, letting the cool rain and fresh air wash away the strange smell. The scent lingered for days after that. I tried to ignore it, but it made me sick. The next day, another incident occurred. This time there were footsteps in the hallway outside my bedroom door. Soft, deliberate steps that seemed to pause just outside my room before fading away. I held my breath, listening intently. The sound was unmistakable. Someone had been walking past my bedroom door. My rational mind tried to find an explanation. Maybe it was a neighbor returning from work at the same time as me. But there should have been no reason for someone else to be in the hallway so late and quiet. As I checked the locks one more time than usual that night before bed, I felt a growing sense of unease. I started leaving the TV on at night, its low hum a comforting presence against the creeping shadows of my apartment. The constant sound kept me company in the dark, and it seemed to help keep whatever was happening at bay. One specific night stood out, the night I almost left. After yet another sleepless hour lying awake in the dark, I made up my mind. I would pack my things and go to a hotel for the night. Just one night away from all these strange occurrences would do me good, I told myself. But as I sat on the edge of the bed trying to convince myself that this was a rational move, I started thinking about the practicalities. My lease, the money it would cost, the embarrassment of having to explain this to my friends and family. What would I even tell them? I convinced myself it would be fine, and for about a week it was. There were no more footsteps in the hallway, no taps at night, no strange sense lingering in the air. It felt like things had returned to normal. But as time passed, that sense of safety began to erode. I think about that week a lot now, because after it, I never had a quiet night in that apartment again. The strange occurrences returned, and they were relentless. It was like living in a house where every night a small door into an alternate reality opened slightly, letting just enough darkness seep through to keep you awake, but never enough to see what was truly causing it. Each night felt like I was being drawn into a psychological maze, designed by the unknown entity that seemed to be orchestrating these events. The sense of dread that began creeping over me reminded me of an old psychological experiment where subjects were isolated in a dark room and given only their own thoughts for company. It turned out they would begin to see shadows move when there was no movement at all. It's not just about fear, it's about the erosion of one's sense of reality. The rational mind starts to question everything. Is this really happening? Is my perception reliable? And before I knew it, even the most mundane activities, like washing dishes or taking out the trash, became fraught with a strange anxiety. The door was open. I hadn't opened it. I stood in the hallway, keys still in hand, staring at the gaping entrance to my apartment. The deadbolt was undone, the chain lock dangling loosely. Every muscle in my body tensed, a primal response to an unseen threat. My heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the usual city noises filtering up from below. The door creaked softly as I pushed it open wider. I didn't want to go inside. I wanted to turn around and run, but my feet felt rooted to the spot. The hallway stretched out behind me, long and empty, casting eerie shadows that seemed to dance at the edges of my vision. I stepped inside cautiously, each footfall echoing like a gunshot in the silence. My eyes scanned every corner, every nook, looking for anything amiss. The living room looked untouched, the couch still askew from where I'd left it, the TV remote on the coffee table. But something felt different. The kitchen sink was clean, too clean. I hadn't done the dishes since morning. A shiver ran down my spine as I moved through the apartment, checking each room methodically. The bedroom closet was closed, but not latched tight. A gap at the bottom revealed a sliver of darkness inside. My breath hitched in my throat as I stared at it. I couldn't bring myself to open it. Instead, I turned and walked back to the living room, picking up my phone with trembling hands. I dialed Emily, my best friend, hoping she'd answer quickly. She did on the third ring. "Hey, what's up?" Her voice was bright and cheerful, a stark contrast to the dread pooling in my stomach. I think someone's been in my apartment," I managed to say, my voice barely above a whisper. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't sleep properly. Nights were spent staring at the ceiling, listening for any sound that might indicate someone or something was still there. Every creak, every hum of the city outside my window felt like a warning. I left the lights on constantly. The knife from the kitchen block sat on my nightstand, its cool metal a small comfort against the shadows that seemed to press in around me. My eyes were perpetually bloodshot, and dark circles had taken up residence under them. I couldn't stop thinking about what it might be, not just in the apartment anymore, but something that had happened to me. The nights were the worst. I tried sleeping with headphones in, blasting white noise to drown out any possible sounds from within the apartment. But it wasn't enough. The terror was inside me now. The walls and locks couldn't keep it out anymore. One night, I found myself sitting upright in bed at 4 a.m., my heart pounding so hard it felt like it would burst through my chest. I stumbled to the kitchen, grabbed some food, and ate standing up, unable to find any comfort in the familiar routine. The world outside was silent. The clock ticked away, each second feeling heavier than the last. I couldn't keep living like this. It wasn't sustainable. And so, one night, it happened. I woke up to a soft whisper, a voice calling my name from somewhere within the apartment. The voice came again, closer this time, almost like it was right next to me, whispering into my ear. The bedroom door creaked open slowly, revealing nothing but darkness beyond. But there was something else, a faint scent of decay and a strange, almost electric hum in the air. I knew I wasn't going to survive another week like that. One way or another, it was going to end. The night it became undeniable started like any other. October 12th, a Friday. The air was crisp, the leaves crunching under my feet as I walked home from work. I had locked up for the night by 7:30, but there was no comfort in that routine. That's when I realized this wasn't going to be one of those nights where I could ignore the feeling and hope it went away. I didn't turn on any lights. Instead, I moved slowly through the dark apartment, each step measured, deliberate. The floor creaked underfoot. It was a sound I'd heard countless times before, but tonight it felt louder, more insistent. I turned on the light and froze. The room felt heavier somehow, like there was weight in every inch of space. The temperature dropped noticeably, as if someone had opened a window and let the night air in. A sense of dread settled over me. That's when I saw it. The mirror on my dresser, usually spotless, now fogged up with condensation. In the reflection, something shifted, a shape, a form that shouldn't have been there. I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my ears. The shape moved again, more distinct this time, a tall figure standing just behind me. I ran my fingers over it, feeling every edge and groove. A symbol, a mark that shouldn't have been there. The carving was deep enough to suggest it had taken significant effort to create, but it looked old, like it belonged in a room that hadn't seen sunlight in decades. I didn't tell anyone about the carving at first. I couldn't. What would they think? But eventually, I showed it to my friend. Her reaction was one of shock and disbelief. In the weeks that followed, I moved into a new apartment, a place with no memories attached to it. I stopped going online for days at a time, avoiding anything that reminded me of how it all started. Now every night before bed, I still do this. I check under my bed, behind doors, and even in the closet, just to make sure there's nothing lurking in the shadows. I told a few people what happened, the ones who would listen without judgment. Most didn't believe me. The relationship with the guy I was dating back then didn't survive it all. He just couldn't understand what I had been through. One morning, a few months later, as I was sifting through old boxes of stuff from the apartment, I found an envelope tucked inside a book, one of my favorites. Inside the envelope was a photograph, an old one, torn around the edges. The picture showed me standing outside my old apartment on the exact date when everything had changed. But I wasn't alone in the photo. There was someone else behind me, a tall figure, barely visible in the shadow, but definitely there. The realization hit me hard. It had been with me all along. I still have that photograph. It's tucked away safely now, somewhere only I can find it. It's late at night here, in my small apartment on Maple Street. The hallway light is on, casting a faint glow under the door. And on those nights where the world outside is quiet enough, I still wonder if telling this story was the right thing. And then there are moments when I question if sharing my experience was an act of catharsis or just another layer of exposure. I think about a locked door in my old apartment, how it became less a barrier and more a symbol of isolation after all that happened. I could hear the lock clicking into place, sealing me off from everything else, but also from myself. It's as if part of me is still trying to escape the confines of that time period. Maybe telling this story was like opening another door, one I can't close again. When you open a door for someone who doesn't belong there, they have a way of lingering, almost ghost-like in their presence, always there even when you don't see them. It's almost like the experience itself is an archetype from Jungian psychology, a shadow aspect that I never fully confronted. What if the very act of sharing has kept him more present than absent? Is it possible to exorcise something that hasn't yet fully revealed itself? The idea that there might be a part of me holding onto this narrative, even the darkest parts, even the things left unsaid, it's haunting. Like a lighthouse beacon in the night, I'm drawn back to those moments again and again. And perhaps, like a lighthouse, it's both a warning and a sanctuary, a beacon that might guide others out of their own darkness while simultaneously keeping me forever tethered to mine. That's all for tonight. If this story stayed with you, good. That means it worked. If you have your own confession, something you've never said out loud, something that still doesn't make sense, you know where to find us. Drop it below. And if you're not already here, subscribe. There are more stories where this one came from. Psychotic Confessions will be in the dark.